Okay, so we have a animation. There's a timeline here with an animation of various poses and actions that my character does, and we want to get in two cameras to change the point of view as she goes through those motions. And I've discovered a few things along the way that it's actually easier, at least in my experience, to set up the camera's timeline first. I've had a lot of problems trying to make a timeline work here for the cameras. If I put in Cine Machine Track, it doesn't give me the place to load my main camera. So what I've decided to do is work with the cameras, create a new timeline, because what you can do is you can copy and paste this track. So you can see that anytime I click on a camera, it really wants its own timeline. And so what I will do is I'll explain a couple more things about the cameras, the virtual cameras. And I'm going to make an empty game object, which will house the cameras, and that's where we're going to create the timeline. So first of all, you might notice that this is a little dimmed out. And it's a little bit dimmed out because I wanted to work on the full shot perspective without having that camera in my way. So I actually deactivated it, which you can click right here. So now you can see that that camera's ready to go. This camera's ready to go. The reason why this camera is showing me the shading that I'm accustomed to is because it's currently the active camera. If we look at the, so basically virtual cameras take over the main camera. So the main camera basically employs them for whatever shot you want. When you use a timeline, the timeline takes precedence. So it switches from camera to camera based on what it says in the timeline. If you don't yet have a timeline, then there's a priority to the cameras. Whoops. So you can see right now, my close-up camera has a priority of 20. My full shot camera has a priority of 10. The higher number gives the priority. So this currently has the priority, which is why I can see the shading and setup stuff. If I click the main camera, you can also see it here. It's considered, right now it's considering the close-up camera to be the live camera, and that's because it has the higher priority. If I change my priority number down to 10, it probably still, let's see, it's still considering it the close-up because it's the most recent prioritized camera. The full shot, when I first made it, was the camera with higher priority because it was the most recently done. Now you can see if I switch this to be the higher priority camera, you can then see the shading. So if you've struggled with not seeing the shading for how to set up the dead zones, etc., that's part of the reason. I'm going to switch this back so they have equal priority. Okay, so let's get an empty game object. Actually, before I do that, let me turn this up so I can see. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that shot. And I was happy with the full shot. So I'm happy with the positioning of my virtual cameras. I am now going to create an empty game object. And I'm going to call it Cine Machine Cameras, or CM Cams. Whenever you make an empty game object, you really want it positioned at 0, 0, 0, especially when you've already positioned the things that are going to go inside. Because when I position this at 0, 0, 0, it will not affect the position of the two cameras I'm going to put inside. So now I'm going to choose both of these and drag them into CM Cams. And you can see this is the best place, the CM Cams empty game object, to create a director component and timeline asset, because it's where the cameras live. And by the way, if timeline wasn't open, close that. So if timeline's not open, you can get it under window and sequencing. So even though I have this Amy timeline for the animation, I'm going to create a new timeline for my cameras, and then I'm going to copy over my sequence from the Amy timeline. So I'm going to go ahead and click create. And I like the name CM Cam timeline. So I'm going to click save. And it automatically puts this track in. We don't want that, so I'm going to right click and delete it. And then I will add a Cine Machine track. And then it's important that for your Cine Machine track that you drag over the main camera. Okay, so now I can place my different cameras at will. So I can put that in. If my playhead is over this camera, I see it. If my playhead is over this camera, I see it. And that's because the priority is being driven by the sequence on the timeline. Okay, I'm not going to place those yet because I want to get the animation timeline from Amy. So I'm going to add an animation track. Actually, I'm not sure if I need to do this. Let's find out. Let's go to the Amy timeline, and you'll notice that if I right click on the animation track, I can copy it. And now we'll go back to the CM Cam's timeline. Why did that switch to a Cine Machine track? And there's no paste here. Let me try Control V. Yeah, Control V worked. And I'm going to make sure that Amy's animator is in here. So put that there. Oh, let me see. Let me go back to Amy. Huh. Oh, it looks right now. Let me see what happens if I play this. Yeah, it's looking right. Okay, so even though this says none, the fact that I pasted this in worked fine. So now it's just a matter of, and you can scroll out if you need to. I'm going to start her out in a close-up view. Probably a little bit more than idle. Then I'm going to take my full shot and I'm going to overlap it a little bit so there'll be a camera transition. And I want it to stay a full shot while walking, jumping jacks. I think I'm going to do it to about there. And then I'm going to bring my close-up back in and overlap that again. I want to make sure I get back to full shot when she goes to sit down. So now I'm going to bring the full shot back, have it go a little bit, and then probably the end of it, I have a really long idle at the end. I'm going to have that be a close-up. So I'll cross it a little bit and then bring it to the end. And hopefully they're ending at the same time. It doesn't look like it. Okay, so let's play that. I'm actually going to click this button here that says maximize on play, because watch what happens when you do that. So there she is. Now she's walking. Then she sits down on the air. And she stands up. So you could tell the camera's really jiggly. That is something that happens, but since you've had to do a lot in this assignment, we're going to look at it next time. But hopefully adding the new timeline after, and actually I think I'm going to delete this Amy timeline in case it's conflicting. And so now we just have the CM Cam's timeline. So you can export that into a movie and put it in the folder. So I hope it goes well for you. And I will see you next time.